You know, today we're going to be talking about this topic, be careful what you post. And in my opinion, it's a topic that doesn't get enough discussion. And I know it's some sensitive areas, and I know it doesn't apply to everybody the same way, but I'm going to try to make it in a point today that you'll find some applications to you individually. And I should say this, if it doesn't apply to you individually, you may know somebody that needs to be a little more careful with some of the things they post. And if you didn't know already, these classes are being streamed, and they're all being saved out on our Woodland Oaks website. So you always have access to them, even people you know, if you need to encourage them to watch some of these classes, they're out there and available for them. But today we're going to look at some of the pitfalls that we encounter when we decide to leave our footprint or maybe our tire tracks out on social media. And let me say up front, nothing I'm going to talk about today is directed to anybody in this class. This is directed more to me than anybody else. And I'm not going to suggest that you get off of social media. I think social media is a fantastic tool. I use it regularly. I like it. But there are some pitfalls and some traps we need to be sensitive to. You might say social media is an old age problem that just has a rocket booster attached to it. Some new twists and turns, some more visibility. Glenn, could I get you, the lights are off in here for some reason, right beside you. Oh, yeah. Awesome. I don't know why I missed that earlier. Got a lot of sunshine. All right. Well, let's get started this morning with this first piece. According to Statista, which is a global online statistics, market research, and business intelligence portal, here are the most popular social networking apps as of July 2023. And these are in millions of monthly active users. So if you're looking at this and you see that Facebook is the one that's at the very top, that basically means there are almost 3 billion people globally that have active accounts and use Facebook on a regular basis. And I suspect and I know the print's a little bit small, but as you look through some of these, I bet you can probably recognize most of these applications. The one that you may not is the one called Douyin, which is at the bottom, or next to the last one. And it's Chinese TikTok. But it's the same thing as the U.S. TikTok. It's a short-form video app. Now, one of the social media platforms I use regularly is not even shown on here, but it's the number 11. These are the top 10, and that's Twitter, or now it's called X. And there are some 619 million users, so Twitter falls just out of the top 10. But given that Vladimir Putin and Tucker Carlson had their big interview a few days ago on X, it's probably in the top 10 as we speak. And some of you may be, even another one that some of you in this classroom may be familiar with, is one called Pinterest, and it has about 482 million users. And to add a little context here, when you look at Facebook, as of 2023, if you combine the U.S. and Canada, and these are global numbers on the screen, but if you look at just the U.S. and Canada, there are over 269 million users. The combined population of the U.S. and Canada is 379 million, which means that about 70% of the U.S. Canadian population are on Facebook. Think about that for a minute. And interestingly, in the 18 to 24-year age bracket, they only account for 18% of the accounts. So we tend to think of social media as for the young people only. That's not correct. Everybody is using it. And when you think of this idea of 6 degrees of separation, is it really that far-fetched to think that anything you post out on social media could be seen by millions of people? Everybody does know what 6 degrees of separation is, right? It's an often studied theory that says a person is connected to another person through a series of no more than 5 intermediaries. So you may have a friend who has a friend, who has a friend, who has a friend, who has a friend that knows you. And that's why this thing can spread so rapidly and so quickly. And before we move on, I want to align on some technology to make sure we're all on the same page here. But these are the most popular media platforms. Now the question is, are we individually? Are we posters? Are we lurkers? Or are we a neon sign? Or do we have no clue what I'm talking about? If you have an account on one of these applications and you use it and you post and you communicate, then you are a poster. Hence this class is be careful what you post. If you have an account but you never post anything, but you sometimes like it or give a thumbs up, then you're what I'm referring to as a neon sign. You're open, closed, you're not saying anything, but people know you're there, and sometimes you're giving thumbs up or disapprovals of things that people see. And so we have to be a little bit sensitive even when we do that because of our messaging. And sometimes it's important for Christians to recognize we are sending some messages. If you neither write on these applications or thumbs up or like anything, you're what is known as a lurker. It has a bad connotation sound to it, but maybe that's not all bad when it comes to social media. And if you have no clue what I'm talking about at all, I hope you are still enjoying those flip phones and Mayberry RFD reruns. There are some positive benefits to social media. One of them is this rapid information news. Social media, people are getting their news from social media faster and more often than they do from radio and newspapers. According to the International Chief of Police, the police are using social media in about 85% of their crimes that they investigate. I know in my own little neighborhood, if you happen to drive in and the people don't recognize you or recognize your car, somebody takes a picture of it and it's spread all over social media in a matter of minutes. Some people are getting degrees online and never even leave their home. You have a question you want answered, it takes you about 2 minutes to find an answer on social media. We even support some mission work here at Woodland Oaks. One of them is the Texas International Bible Institute, and they almost teach exclusively by social media. We have some members here that are actually going to the Sunset School of Preaching right now using social media. Social media is good for relationships. You can keep up with friends, classmates, in other states, in other countries. We learn things about each other. We share pictures, kids, grandkids, even pets. We learn where to shop, where the deals are. Small businesses rely heavily on social media. It helps employers and employees. 95% of job placement recruiters use social media. And finding jobs is often about getting the word out to as broad a network as you can, and you can't do that anywhere better than social media. And we also use social media to help those who are a little bit isolated, stroke victims. We can use it to monitor sleep, to monitor heart, to monitor diets, a whole lots of things. It can help us in improving our quality of life. We've got some that are no longer can drive, but we can stay connected with them through social media. It helps us reach friends and family that may be isolated from us. We stream our services. We have people join us online this morning. Thank you guys for being here with us. We've had musicians and other artists that have gotten recognition and famous and started their careers through social media. And we've seen firsthand the value of social media in a lot of our emergency response needs, floods, hurricanes, and the like. So social media is very, very good. But there's a darker side to social media. The rapid spread of fake, inaccurate, or false information. A study published in the Journal of Science found that lies spread 6 times faster than truth on Twitter. And as a result of social media, we've had just an increase in theft, identity theft, hacked accounts. So LifeLock, ID Shield, Identity Force, and a lot of these other companies are doing quite well in this business of social media. It helps with schoolwork, but it can also hurt. Social media can be a distraction. It can rob students of time that they need to be doing their homework. It's easy to shortcut answers on homework. One study I read said that schools that banned cell phones had seen a 6% increase in student performance. And you may have seen, even in the Houston area within the last couple of weeks, a school in which the administration took the cell phones away, they all walked out. They walked completely out of the school. It can create stress. It can damage relationships. How many friendships have been negatively impacted by social media? Social media can be a time waster. One study reported that we spend up to 28% of our time per day on social media. Another study said that on average, when you stop what you're doing to read a new text or a new email, it takes 20 to 25 minutes to get back on track to what you were doing before you read the text or the email. Those posts of your buddies and girlfriends from 10 years ago may derail something going on in your life today. That insensitive remark you posted on social media may never go away. Should we talk to people face to face? Yes, we should. But it's easy to sit in the comfort of your own home and fire out all these emails, right? And how far away are we today in which little kids are jealous of their mom and dad's iPhone because of all the attention mom and dad's iPhone might be getting? And I can go on and on. Porn sites, is that a problem? Online gaming sites, is that a problem? Social media makes it easy to go places that Christians shouldn't go. It's almost as if Satan opened up an express line to trap Christians. And I could go on and on with this, but I think you get the picture. So what are we as Christians to make of this two-edged sword known as social media? Well, I think the first thing we have to say is there is value in moderation. Is it possible to sleep too much? Is it possible to drink too much milk? Eat too many chocolate chip cookies? Exert ourselves when exercising? We love the rain, but not the floods. We love the sunshine, but not the sunburn. Same thing with money and time. We love our families deeply, but sometimes those last few days on an extended vacation, we're time to get home, right? And Scripture speaks to us about moderation. In fact, one of the qualities that the Holy Spirit produces in us is self-control. And one of the verses that's not up here that we've talked about recently is found over in Titus, the first chapter, verse 15 and following. And it's those verses we looked at that had two words repeated 3 times. Self-control, self-control, self-control. So all this got me to thinking. Cigarettes have warning labels. Water bottles have warning labels. Prescriptions have warning labels. Video games, music, they all have warning labels. There are even warning labels on things that I don't need warning labels on, like which end to use for a chainsaw. But if we've got warning labels on all this kind of stuff, and we've got a need to moderate on this, why is there not a warning label with social media? Well, I dug into this a little bit further. And lo and behold, I found what I think is a warning label for social media. It's a little bit hard to read. You got to get down in the details. But let me blow it up just a little bit. I'm just kidding. Before I get accused of proliferating fake news, I did not find a social media warning. But had I really found a social media warning, I think this is what it might have said. The use of social media may lead to an overwhelming desire to share one's opinion. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to validate anything. You don't have to research anything. All you got to do is blurt it out there, right? And who has met someone that didn't have an opinion? And for many, those opinions seem to really come fast and furious when you're sitting at home in your house shoes and your house coat, and the walls around you are familiar and you're just firing out comments left and right. Social media may lead to a belief that image is everything. We love sharing everything on social media, don't we? We even love sharing pictures of ourselves. It even has a name. Selfies. Look where I am. Look what I'm wearing. Look what I'm doing. Look where I'm going. Look what I just did. Does the world really need to know what you had for breakfast this morning? And another one that just drives me crazy is seeing people out on vacation halfway around the world, sharing with the world that they're halfway around the world on vacation for the next 3 weeks. Hello, world. No one's at my home for the next 3 weeks. PSA from the local law enforcement. You might want to wait till you get home before you start sharing those pictures of your vacation. So maybe we need to ask ourselves one small question. Are we really interested in sharing with the world who we are? Are we more interested in sharing with the world who we want the world to think we are? Social media may lead to an insatiable appetite for continued affirmation. I actually read some blogs where the bloggers compete with one another for their like to post ratios. In other words, their target is for every post they make that they get a like. What's inherently jumping out to you about that? People post things just to generate likes, right? So maybe the next time we get ready to post something on social media, we need to ask ourselves, is this something that God is going to like? After all, it's Him we need to be trying to get affirmation, not everybody else. And what happens if I post something looking for an affirmation and I don't get it? Feelings get hurt, right? That may have been a beautiful photo of a sunset that you posted, but if there's some activity going on in the post that I can't condone, I'm not going to give you a like. It may have been a beautiful photograph. It may have been a beautiful sunset. But if there's activity going on in the background that I can't condone and I can't honor God, I can't affirm that picture. What about an uncontrollable addiction? There's addiction to drugs, to alcohol, to pornography. Is there such a thing as addiction to social media? Is there anybody sitting here right now just dying to check social media? Can't put it away. And is it out of the question that somebody on this side of the classroom could be instant messaging somebody on this side of the classroom right now about something going on, or even about me or this topic? And you tell me if there's an addiction to social media or not. How about a permanent history in cyberspace? Have you ever been to Disney or one of these big amusement parks and you buy those big old balloons filled with helium and you give it to your kid, and 2 minutes later they let go of it and off it goes? And there's a little bit of a seeking feeling, and that seeking feeling is, I'm never going to get that back again, and I don't know where it's about to go. That's the way it is with everything that's out on social media. You don't know where it's going, and you don't know when it's coming back. That picture of you and your buddies at 2 a.m. on a spring break or that hunting trip might have been funny at the time, but it might not be so funny when it circles back around when you're trying to apply for that job, or maybe a young man looking to marry someone's daughter and you have to go talk to the father. And finally, a warning with social media is there are unintended and hidden consequences. And if we're lucky, it might just lead to some hurt feelings that over time will heal. But what about that young boy or young girl that looks up to you and sees you doing something that you shouldn't be doing, and they want to follow? And if you knew they were doing it, you would stop them and say, hey, look, I was totally wrong. Please don't do that. But that's the problem with social media, right? You don't know who sees it, you don't know what context they see it, and you don't know how they interpret it. You might say there are millions and millions of little eyes constantly watching. So is social media a challenge to Christians? I don't think there's any question. In my lifetime, I don't think I've ever encountered something so bipolar. The good is off the charts good, but the bad can be devastatingly bad if we're not careful. Social media may very well be the greatest invention since the printing press. And there is some value there to glorify God. I don't know. The potential reach is incredible. How quickly and easy it is to communicate is off the scale. But there are also misspoken words, unintended consequences, and mistakes that travel faster, deeper, and quicker than anything we've ever dealt with before. So as Christians, how are we to deal with social media? Well, one is following the advice of someone named Germany Kent, who once said, "Tweet others the way you want to be tweeted." Which I like that, but I think there are other places we can go for some guidance, like the Scriptures. Right? And you may ask, what can we learn from the Bible about social media? Social media didn't exist in Jesus' day, or did it? And I suggest to you, social media is just another form of communications. We have gone from face-to-face to drum beats, to written letters, to Morse code, to telegraph, to telephone, to phone calls, to text, and to now social media. Social media is just a new platform that brings people together and allows for conversation and interaction. In biblical times, people would go to the markets, to the town squares, to the places of worship to talk. Today, we can just hop on our iPhones or log on to our favorite media sites. And I say all that to say this: there is nothing new under the sun. And that even goes for this phenomenon known as social media. So I want you to think for just a minute of a market setting. For me, one of the things I think about is Blanket, Texas. Anybody ever hear of Blanket, Texas? Population 390. It's where my grandmother used to live. I'd go visit my grandmother, and my uncle would take me down to the general store in downtown Blanket, Texas, with this big overhang, where all the men would be playing checkers. Some checkers. They were solving world problems, but they were playing some checkers. Or maybe go to Old Town Jerusalem, area where lots of people gather, buyers and sellers, pushing their wares, making new friends, striking deals, men talking about the weather, women talking about their husbands, and on and on. If you pay close attention to these markets, you might even recognize someone you know. So maybe there is something to this 6 degrees of separation thing. And being an effective communicator is the same whether you're talking face-to-face or over social media. The only thing that's changed is because of the speed and the reach. We have to be more careful. And the Scriptures are full of guidance on effective communications. Anybody recognize anybody in that picture that you might know? How about this gentleman in the green right over here to the far right? That's Ken Seagal. Those of you that can't tell. 6 degrees of separation. Proverbs 17 is where we'll start. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. You know, godly people need to know when to speak and when to be silent. We need to be people with a cool spirit, not a hot temper. So the next time we're ruffled by that post, take a big, deep breath and think about it and even pray about it before you respond. Yeah, Glenn? Yep. For those of you that couldn't hear Glenn, those of you streaming with us this morning, basically he was making a point that we just need to be real careful. There are some things that can be said, but you have to be gentle in how it's communicated. And I know it sometimes doesn't seem this way, but I didn't plant Glenn in here because some of his points I do come back and circle back to, but he's always on point, and I very much appreciate you, brother. And he is exactly right. Proverbs 18:1, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. One thing that we find with technology is it facilitates isolation. We shop online. We communicate by email or text. We bank with ATMs. We can even shop for groceries and have it delivered and not even leave our car or our home. We can even stream our worship services today. And if we're not careful, what that isolation does, it isolates and insulates us from everybody else. One of the things that Scripture tells us to do is share and spread the gospel, to encourage one another. And that's very difficult to do when we don't get out and amongst people. So we need to be careful to use this new form of social media in ways to spread, take advantage of the additional lanes and the traction and the depth, and communicate, not just isolate ourselves. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. Abe Lincoln once said, it is better to remain silent and thought of as a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And one thing about social media, it has given a massive platform to a lot of people to remove all doubt. So consider the other side of this thing. We need to be quick and willing to listen as we are to speak. I rarely post on social media, but I read posts. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen verbal spats going on between two individuals where it is clear that what this person said, this person is not listening to. And what this person said, this person is not listening to. And if I see that going on between two Christians, you wonder what someone that's a non-Christian thinks when they see that going on between two Christians. When wickedness comes, contempt comes also, and with dishonor comes disgrace. If you post or you get tagged in a post that reveals sinful or at best questionable behavior for a Christian, don't be surprised when people judge you. Maybe they shouldn't, but don't be surprised. Sometimes we just have to ask ourselves, is this picture I'm about to post on social media something that I really need to send out, or is it possible it's going to be misinterpreted? And with social media, interpretation is in the eye of the beholder. Proverbs 18:4, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. We need to strive to be wise in our social media posting. Let our words be sweet and encouraging and helpful. We've talked about it before, but words can be encouraging. Words can also tear down. And one of the downsides of social media is that we're reading words on a computer screen. When we're talking face-to-face, I can supplement that conversation with facial expressions, with hand gestures. I can see the look in your face or your eye if you're understanding or not understanding, and then maybe I can adjust the communication a little bit. When we're behind a computer screen, that doesn't exist. It's words. Only words. So we have to be real careful that what we're typing can't be misinterpreted. And the power of unintended consequences is strong on social media, even or especially so during those fits of rage. Proverbs 18:6 and 7. A fool's lips walk into a fight, and his mouth invites a beating. A fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are a snare to his soul. There's no one in this room that likes watching those old westerns as much as I do, but one of the things when you watch those old westerns, how do they handle disputes? Old-fashioned brawls and fisticuffs, right? And most of my life growing up, we had kind of grown past. We'd gotten a little more civilized, although in the last few years, that seems to be reversing trend, and we're seeing more and more of that taking place. But have you ever seen one of those spats over social media that's just as embarrassing as a fist fight? Just people just hammering each other with some of the most vile and offensive and terrible language. We need to be careful, not be the ones that are provoking, inviting, or engaging in verbal beatings. Rather, turn the other cheek. Or maybe we just need to turn and not click. And some of these verbal beatings seem to have roots in politically sensitive articles and commentary. And we need to be real careful about forwarding that article and adding our 2 cents worth. And just ask ourselves, are we about to be helpful or hurtful as in our call as Christians to glorify God? Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. We're going to tackle the topic of being careful with our time next week, so I'm not going to hit that right now. But social media does consume a lot of time. And what this verse is saying is that a brother who is lazy could bring down an entire group, right? It's kind of like the old, a fence is only as good as its weakest link. Is it ever possible that a Christian brother or sister could be doing damage to the work of the churches by some ill-advised post? Proverbs 18:13. If one gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. I touched on this a little bit ago, but one of the most frustrating things I see about social media is some people taking that article and forwarding it. And you find out that when you read the article, that the article and the headlines don't even line up, right? I think we need to be careful to realize that headlines these days are often misleading and politically motivated. Stop and read the fine print before you forward something. And I could go on and on with some of these thoughts from Proverbs, but I'm running out of time and I want to move on in a couple more areas. I want to hit this one. Matthew 28:18. And Jesus said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. I want everybody to read that one real carefully again. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. You might say, well, what's that have to do with social media? What's that have to do with me? Well, the online world, this social media world we live in, things revolve around me, me, me. That's not what the scriptures say. Things revolve around Jesus Christ, who has authority in all things. Social media may feed our egos, may make us more self-absorbed, but Christianity is about humility, selflessness, submission, and obedience. How about this one? Matthew 18:15-17. If your brother sins against you, go to him and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take 1 or 2 others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. If he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector, or essentially those seen against God. These verses here are not about how to deal with friends and acquaintances outside the church. These verses here are about dealing with brothers and sisters inside the church. And one of the things the scripture here doesn't say about resolving conflicts inside the church is simply block or unfriend somebody on social media. It says go to them and talk to them. Our church family is full of imperfections. We all have things we do that irritate others, and all others have things that they do that irritate us. But we need to not post things that alienate each other. We need to learn to be forgiving and challenge one another gently, as Glenn said earlier today. As Christians, we need to be willing to accept constructive criticism But we also need to be gentle in how we go to people and talk to people. There's a way it can be done. There's a way Jesus would do it, and we need to model what he would do. And let's not let the social media norms override how we handle conflicts within the church. And finally, this one you knew was coming. Matthew 12, 36, 37. But I tell you that everyone will give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned. You've heard me say this one before, but this is one of those verses of conscience to me. When you read the words in this text here, it hits me at my core. And I hope it hits you at your core too. Going back to the opening paragraph I shared with you today that showed Facebook is the most popular social media application. Facebook was created in 2004 by Mark Zuckerberg, who was a 19-year-old Harvard University student. He was trying to devise a platform and a way for him and his buddies to quickly and easily communicate with each other. Think about that for a minute. The most popular social media app was designed to communicate quickly and easily, not thoughtful and thoroughly. Speed promotes carelessness. It's harder to control a vehicle at higher speeds. It's harder to control our communications at higher speeds. And carelessness leads to unintended consequences. And social media is a breeding ground for unintended consequences. How will I ever know if I've hurt someone's feelings or been a bad example to someone when I don't know who saw it and what they did and how they interpreted it? So I think we need to step back a little bit and think about the ramifications that come with social media. Carelessness. For by your words you will be acquitted, and by your words you will be condemned, regardless of the format or platform. So I'm going to leave you with this. Just think before you post. Make sure the things we're saying are encouraging, helpful, inspiring, they're necessary, and they're kind. Social media is a fantastic tool and a fantastic platform. We can reach people we've never before been able to reach. But we need to be careful with it. Because we don't know where it goes, we don't know what is said, we don't know how people read it, and we don't know how people interpret it. And we don't know if we've hurt anybody or not. So I'm just saying to you, be sensitive to it. We just need to be careful with it. Don't get off of it, just be careful with it. Any more comments? Any questions? Well, I came at you with both guns a-blazing today, and my apologies. I didn't mean to say anything that would discourage you. I hope it was encouraging. We just need to be careful with this form of communication because it can get us in a lot of trouble. And sweet fellowship awaits. So I'm going to offer a prayer, and then we'll be dismissed, and maybe you'll get out even a little bit early today.